Welcome, everybody. My name is Tricia Denton. I'm the president of the League of Women Voters, Leelanau County. And I've got that low voice. People are reminding me to put the mic closer. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization that encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. We never ever support or oppose candidates or parties. The League of Women Voters Leelanau County is an organization fully committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion in principle and in practice. There shall be no barriers to full participation in this organization. Diversity, equity, and inclusion are central to the organization's current and future success in engaging individuals, households, communities, and policymakers in creating a more perfect democracy. Membership is open to men and women who are 16 years of age or older, who subscribe to the purposes and policy of the League. If you missed our program last month, we talked a lot about what our policies are, what our positions are. That video is now available if you missed it or you want to rewatch it. You can do that through a link that will be available on our website soon, we hope. If you're already a current member, you should have gotten our email with the link to that program to learn more about our positions and how they're formed. More information may be found at our website, lwvleelanau.org. I think that's all I'll say about membership at this time. Join us, just a reminder, next month's forum is on in celebration of Women's History Month. And there's more information about that special program on your tables and at the table out front. So, the League of Women Voters, imagining a democracy where every person has the desire, the right, the knowledge, and the confidence to participate. So to that end, today's program is we're going to be covering the Citizen Redistricting Commission. And Jackie Johnson's going to help me do the PowerPoint. We're going to go through slides. We have some other folks who have firsthand experience with the Voters Not Politicians effort that helped to pass Proposal 2 that put this in place. But the League's mission to empower voters and defend democracy to that end, we are a nonpartisan organization. We don't support or oppose candidates, like I said, but we can support or oppose certain ballot proposals if they're in alignment with our positions. We study ballot proposals to see if they fit with the League positions. In 2018, we supported Proposal 2, which amended the Michigan Constitution in order to create the Citizens Redistricting Commission, that's a mouthful, that we're going to talk to you more about today. So, as you know, in the past, the Michigan legislature was responsible for drawing the district maps for the U.S. Congress and the state legislature. As a result, Michigan's maps for the U.S. Congress, the maps were drawn to ensure that the party in power stayed in power. Last spring, Michigan's maps were declared unconstitutional by the Eastern Michigan Federal Trial Court. However, in June of 2018, the U.S. Supreme Court determined that partisan gerrymandering was not the business of federal courts. We have more information on that ongoing controversy that we can share with you at the end of the meeting. But with the passage of Proposal 2, which created the Citizens Redistricting Commission, redistricting was taken out of the hands of the legislature and given to the Redistricting Commission. Since Proposition 2 wasn't an amendment to the Michigan Constitution, it cannot be changed by the legislature. The commission remains in place unless there is a court order to change it. So the League is conducting educational town halls like this in communities across the state to encourage registered voters to apply to be on the commission. This effort is supported by funds from the League of Women Voters Education Fund. So before we get started, I'm going to show you a video in a few seconds here. But the presentation, the PowerPoint that we're going to share with you is going to do three things. First, we're going to show you the 5-minute video that I mentioned. Second, we'll show you a PowerPoint crafted by the Brennan Center that explains, the Brennan Research Center, which explains how the commission will be formed and what rules will govern its work. And then third, we'll show you a few slides from Voters Not Politicians that explain further why voters should apply to be on the commission and answers a few questions that people have asked, a few common questions. So before we get started, I'll just orient you. There are 3x5 cards available up at the desk and pencils, and they've been passed out as well. If you think of a question while we're giving the presentation and you're more comfortable writing something down and handing it in, we'll go over those questions at the end. If you have a quick question you think that and you're comfortable asking that, we'll see if we can answer it on the fly. Or if you'd like to ask a question verbally at the end, we also have room for that. We want to accommodate all the different ways that people think and have questions. That's also part of our diversity, equity, and inclusion policy. So we have a little bit of something for everybody. We also have a handout produced by the Secretary of State that outlines the process and timeline for applying. There's a few copies of that available as well.
The Brennan Center for Justice is at the New York University School of Law. It's a nonpartisan law and policy institute. And they prepared these slides in October 2017 for educational presentations on the ballot proposal before it was passed in November 2018. The commission's structure will be something like that picture. It will be 4 Democrats, 5 Independents, and 4 Republicans. The eligibility qualifications are 2 things. You must be a registered voter and be eligible to vote in Michigan, and you must submit an application. But there are exclusions, and that there have been some lawsuits, some people suing about these exclusions, but we can go into that later. Okay, who is excluded from being on the commission? Within the past 6 years, an applicant cannot be a candidate or elected official for partisan local, state, or federal office. They cannot be an officer or a member of the governing body of a local, state, or national political party. They cannot be a paid consultant, lobbyist, or employee of a lobbyist. And they cannot be employed by the legislature, an elected official employed by a political candidate, a political candidate's campaign, or a political action committee, or be an unclassified state employee exempt from civil service, with exceptions. And I asked Jim Schwartes what that meant, and we kind of think it means that you have been appointed.
Yes.
That's what it means? Good. I wasn't sure. Okay, there are some further exclusions. A commissioner may not be a parent, step-parent, child, stepchild, or spouse of any individual disqualified from the previous exclusions. So your close family members can't do it. And you cannot have been somebody who is disqualified for appointed or elected office by the Constitution. I'm not quite sure what that means, but I think we have an idea. Commissioners are ineligible from holding partisan elective office at the state, county, village, or township level for 5 years after serving on the commission. So they don't want it to be a stepping stone into being a candidate, I guess. Okay, the selection process. In late 2019, registered voters may apply in one of 2 ways. It's really in 2020. There'll be 10,000 random mailings from the Secretary of State's office, or you can get it online, or I have a few printed out copies here today that the individual does themselves. Let's see. First, the Secretary of State must mail applications to 10,000 persons chosen randomly from the state's qualified voter file. Eligible voters may return the application to the Secretary of State's office, or they may use the website. Has anybody received a letter? You have? Okay. I was wondering. I haven't, but okay. There's 10,000 that we sent out there. The second way is eligible voters may apply to the Secretary of State's office using the Redistricting Michigan .org website. Applications will be available at the end of 2019, and the application deadline is June 1st of 2020. I went on that website, and it's fairly easy. It says it'll take you 15 minutes or 20, but there's yes/no questions. There's 2 paragraphs you have to write, and then there's a sheet of your demographics, your age, all that stuff, and you have to then take it to a notary, and you have to have a notary fix that that's your signature. And you have to put your initials, because there's about 4 sheets. If you do it online, it's faster, and then you can just print it off. But you also can do it paper and pencil, too, whichever you would want. Okay. Oh, I'm not quite finished here. After June 1st, 2020, a random process is used to reduce the size of the pools to 60 self-identified Democrats, 60 self-identified Republicans, and 60 self-identified independents. Half of the pool must be made up of applicants who received the random mailing. Yes, there's quite a statistical element to this. And the pool of 80 self-identified independents is made up of those who do not self-identify as Democrats or Republicans. Therefore, it could include members of minor parties, as well as those who don't identify with any party. Then, the majority and minority leaders of the House and Senate of Michigan each get to strike 5 applicants from the pool, for a total of 20 strikes. Further random reductions in the pools must be weighted to reflect the geographic and the demographic makeup of the state. So they're trying to get a variety that represents our state. Eventually, there will be 4 Democrats, 4 Republicans, and 5 independents, for a total of 13 commissioners.
Some of you know I trained as a geographer, so I get to talk about the map portion of this. I'm ready for slide 9. This is just an introductory slide so we can change spots. So the requirements for the map approval process. So before voting on the map must be tested using appropriate technology to ensure compliance with the criteria. Now, what are the criteria? The criteria are things that previously existed before the Redistricting Commission, but there was no mechanism in place to ensure that politicians followed those criteria. There were no checks and balances. So it's not that the criteria have changed, it's that there's a method to ensure that they're followed. So number 2, a final plan for the map may be adopted with a majority vote, which must include at least 2 commissioners from each of the major political parties, plus 2 commissioners who affiliated with neither party. So at least 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, and 2 other independents. So what if there's a deadlock? In the event of a deadlock, ranked choice voting, which is becoming more popular in other states and around the country, ranked choice voting will be the secondary voting mechanism. And then if that fails to result in a clear winner, then the Secretary of State will cast the tie-breaking vote. So what are the map criteria and rules? The map criteria, the Commission must abide by the following criteria in the following order of priority. First district shall be of equal population and comply with the U.S. Constitution, the Voting Rights Act, and other federal requirements. Districts shall be geographically contiguous. Does everybody know what geographically contiguous means? Good. So these are not dragons. These are similar blocks of a geographical unit. Islands are considered, so islands like North and South Manitou, Beaver Island. We actually have islands in our area. Islands are considered to be contiguous with the land to which they are the most closely adjacent or affiliated with. Number 3, districts must reflect the state's diverse population and communities of interest. What are communities of interest? Communities of interest may include, but shall not be limited to, populations that share cultural or historical characteristics or economic interests. Communities of interests do not include relationships with political parties, incumbents, or political candidates, however. Districts shall not provide a disproportionate advantage to any political party. That was part of the issue with the existing lines that we have drawn. Also, districts shall not be drawn in favor or disfavor of an incumbent elected official or candidate, another issue with our current lines. Districts shall reflect consideration of county, city, and township boundaries. And 7, districts shall be reasonably compact. And I'm going to turn it back over to Jackie.
Public participation is meant to be a key part of this commission. There will be 10 public hearings in different geographic locations, and they are required before drawing proposed maps. There will be 5 public hearings that are required after proposed maps are drawn. Open meetings are required, and meetings must be accessible via television or online. Input. The public may also submit plans and underlying data for the commission's consideration, which are also a part of the public record. The commission must publish plans and allow at least 45 days for public comment. And the commission, its staff, attorneys, and consultants may not discuss redistricting matters with the public outside of a public hearing, except if it occurs in writing or in a previous public forum. And I was a little fuzzy on what that meant, so I talked to Jim again, and he and I feel that it's the open meetings law, and that the commission can talk amongst themselves with their staff and experts, but they aren't just to randomly go out and tell different people different things. I don't know. Most of you know the Open Meetings Act, I think. After a plan is adopted, the commission must publicize the plan in a report explaining its decisions and materials used to make those decisions. The budget. By December 1st, 2020, and each census year thereafter, the legislature must appropriate at least 25% of the Secretary of State's general fund or general purpose budget for that fiscal year to compensate commissioners and enable the commission to carry out its duties. So, 2020, 2030, 2040, there has to be an appropriation of money for this commission. The budget must include adequate funds to pay each commissioner at least 25% of the governor's salary, which is now $39,825. Money to retain independent, nonpartisan legal and subject matter experts, and money to conduct meetings and publish notices, and money to maintain records. The timeline for the commission duties. January 1st, 2020, the Secretary of State publishes and mails applications. June 2nd, I think it was June 1st, wasn't it, 2020, the application deadline. You have to have it in. And then a month later, July 1st, 2020, the the Secretary of State eliminates disqualified candidates and submits pools to legislative leaders. In another month, August 2020, the legislative leaders strike a maximum of 20 candidates. Then another month, September 1st, 2020, the Secretary of State randomly selects commissioners. And then they get approximately, well, a little bit more than a year. November 1st, 2021, the final redistricting plan must be adopted. The commissioners must begin their work by October 15th, 2020, and must adapt a redistricting plan for U.S. congressional and state legislature districts, that would be the maps, by November 1st, 2021. They will not continue to serve after November 1st, 2021, even if there are legal challenges. So the job is getting the maps. After that, I think didn't you say that the Secretary of State and the Attorney General will have to deal with any court problems. Our next part is some encouragement from voters, not politicians.
So why should you apply? Well, that sounds like a pretty good salary to me for Leelanau County. We've got nothing better to do for the next year or so, right? So it's a unique job opportunity. And we all have what it takes. There isn't anything, there aren't any special qualifications that you need to possess in order to do this job. All the expert technical experience or technical expertise will be supplied, as Jackie mentioned, in the budget through there's a requirement to appropriate budget dollars to help support the people on the commission with information and talent that they don't possess. So I'll read what they have to say here on slide 19. Goes into a little more detail. It's a unique job opportunity, right? Serving on the commission is a full-time position with a salary of at least 25% of the governor's salary, almost $40,000 a year. If you're employed, your current position is protected while you're serving. And like I was saying, you have what it takes. We each have what it takes. Your job is to just listen to the public, and the commission has the resources to hire expert map makers and consultants to assist you where things require specialized knowledge or expertise. You get to represent Michigan. A successful commission is one that truly represents Michigan voters and citizens. But that can only happen if you apply. You are a representative of Michigan. And you have the power. Michigan's politicians, lobbyists, and special interests used to rig the process. Now you have the power to shape Michigan's future. It's exciting to be a part of something that is empowering democracy, or defending democracy and empowering voters, as the lead saying goes. So there are a few commonly asked questions. These are some of the answers to some of the most commonly asked questions about this process. So what about the other things that weren't covered in the slides or the description that we gave so far? The commission itself will have the power to decide their workplace policies for getting their work done. And again, like I said, employers are required to hold your position while you serve. It's another thing people wonder about. The selection process. It is random, but when the pool is narrowed to the 200, it must be, at that point, it needs to be weighted to make sure that it's still representative of the state of Michigan. So both geographic and demographic makeup of the state. And that the 4 minority and majority legislative leaders can remove up to 5 applicants that they object to for some reason. What about who decides what party you're affiliated with or whether you're part of a party or not? You decide that. So it's up to the individual applicant to determine his or her party affiliation, but you have to swear to that under oath. So for those who are ineligible to serve on the commission, can they participate in the process in other ways? Yes. you can, and that'll be really important to the commission being successful, is having individual citizens make suggestions to them about, you need to make sure that you're accounting for this or that or the other thing. You can even propose maps. You can give testimony at public hearings and submit comments to the commission online. So, I think we already have, we're going to move on to the question period of today's forum. I think we already have one question up here. Oh, no, it's Mike. I thought I had something else. Do we have any questions?
They want to bring up?
Yeah, I have a question. On the basis of the ineligibility qualifications, I'm just curious, how many people in this room and their spouses would not be qualified to work this commission?
So the question was, how many people in this room, based on the ineligibility requirements,
Precinct delegates?
would be
officials?
ineligible? Would you raise your hands again? I'm going to do a quick scan. So does anybody know how many people we have in the room today?
About 45 or so.
About 45 or so, and I see about 8, 9, 10 hands. So one of the people in the front row here mentioned that they had received one of the random applications in the mail, but they're one of the people that's not qualified. So
That's pretty random.
that's pretty random.
Thank you.
You'd think they would have screened it out first, so I don't know. So the rest of you are on notice. We need you, right? There's 10 people out of this room of 45 that already don't qualify. So the rest of you, grab one of those applications when you leave here today, or fill it out online. Any other questions or comments? Sue Miller has one.
One of the criteria for drawing the maps was that there not be a disproportionate weight given to a political affiliation or party in a district or an area. And that was puzzling to me because some areas are traditionally Republican or Democrat. So how does one avoid that disproportionate weight?
We have a ringer in the audience today who worked on the Voters Not Politicians campaign. I wondered. We have a few people that were part of that. Do any of you have anything that you would say to that question regarding that? There's just geographically and historically there are places where they're just traditionally Democratic or Republican, or what do we do about, how do we not have those districts be disproportionately weighted?
Well, my brother-in-law says if everything was rectangles, it would be fair. That's not quite true. But if, instead of being a big circle around a city, if there's Republican, yes, if it's part of a district, or even if it's the whole district, if it makes sense geographically and the other things, I mean, they're not going to divide it, gerrymander it so it doesn't have Republicans in it, but it's common, well, I hope it's common sense.
You have something to add to that?
I think the issue, it gets back to the rationale for drawing the maps. I think the point of the commission would be that they would do their best to work with the populations in their around the state district. So rather than packing and cracking people, they would be trying to do the opposite, trying to make sure that as much as you can that could happen. But even in our precincts here in the Leelanau County, if you can get a 40-60 mix, that's pretty actually fair.
Yeah.
Because that's basically how it's drawn out, where it used to be different from that. But anyway, that would be a legal challenge, obviously, though.
Yes.
So, but if it's not a gerrymander,
Yeah.
and it meets all the other criteria. The other thing is the communities of interest part come into play there too. So in terms of what the community has identified as an interest, and that outweighs maybe a political problem in that sense.
Thank you. So, here's another question that regarding the makeup of the commission. Is there any requirement that the final 13 members of the commission be gender or racially diverse? And there's not, really.
Doesn't that include demographic?
But the ones that are selected based on being a Republican or a Democrat, so there's those other representatives that can represent other communities of interest, and that may be a cultural, historical, but not necessarily racial or gender.
The thought I would have, just, do that, but
Yeah, use that.
just based on Voting Rights Act, the statistical weighting would probably be addressing that, like in, Southern Michigan, where there's more African Americans, that is a statistical issue that can be weighted, so.
So that answers a good lead into the next question, which says, will the commission have access to data analysis to ensure that districts are not excessively partisan? And so that's where I was talking about, there's, the commissioners themselves don't have to have expert knowledge. The budget appropriation that's required for the commission will supply that kind of expertise to make sure that that kind of data analysis is available to the commissioners.
And that isn't something completely new. Even when they were gerrymandering, they still had access to all of that. And I often think about those civil servants and people hired to come in and do that when they watched what came out of it after they had given all the statistics. I wonder how they felt. But that is in place. It'll just be used in a different way. And there'll be more transparency and more hearings, and hopefully a much better set of maps.
So the number 2 on this card is a question about, can commissioners work remotely? So I think that speaks to that answer to that question I had about the commission gets to design their own workplace policies. And I think working remotely is probably going to be a big part of it. It's a big state. There's going to be people, hopefully, representative of the whole state, so they're going to be working remotely. I would think that's a pretty good bet. I got another question. Do the legislative leaders need to provide a rationale reason for striking a candidate? No. So don't be too flamboyant. No. Don't get anybody's attention if you're trying not to. Should a person apply if they've only lived in the state for 4 years?
Sure.
Yes. A big part of our great state is that we have people who've been here a very long time and people who are new, but we're all a part of making this state great, so absolutely.
And I really would like to see some senior citizens, like most of us, apply, because we are quite representative of this state and especially this area.
Any other questions? Oh.
Is there anything that can prevent the president or the federal courts from negating this? I am serious. Is there anything?
Yeah, I know.
I mean, we can go through all of this and then it doesn't make any difference.
So the question is in regard to, is there anything to prevent the federal government from striking down this in Michigan? And does anybody want to answer that question?
Well, the first thing was, it was very important that this is in our Michigan Constitution. If it were just a law, and just about any legislature could strike it down or anything, but that's just my first comment.
Somebody else?
One little piece, I'm going to guess it's 2017, the U.S. Supreme Court, in a case where the Arizona legislature was was trying to throw out this very same process that had been voted in Arizona. The U.S. Supreme Court said that, and the legislature was claiming that they represented the people and therefore had the right to decide how this was going to be done. The Constitution, I'm not going to quote it, but I think it says the people have this right. And they represented that if the people in the state decide to do it this way, or any other way they decide to do, the legislature has no say that they can't do it. So that was one of the things that pushed BNP to start going forward. That's what their lawyers were banking on, which they prevailed through the whole challenge process of even trying to get this on our own ballot. So there is a Supreme Court case saying, no, this is a legitimate way to go about deciding how you want to do your own elections in the state. Remembering that the states have the power for redistricting, have the power to run their own elections. That's independent of the federal Constitution. The Constitution gives the states to do that. It's one of their sovereignties.
Well, and the fact that the Supreme Court said the redistricting is not in their jurisdiction. That kind of supports it. You kind of wonder.
There's nothing in the Constitution that they could do that with. That's why.
Jackie, can you come over here?
Oh, sorry. There's one of our members has researched the lawsuits that have come up for this opposition to Proposal 2, and again, I'm not probably the best person, but I can give you just a little synopsis. There have been the Michigan Republican Party and 5 individuals who affiliate with the party filed a federal lawsuit challenging the constitutionality of the state's independent redistricting commission under the First and 14th Amendments of the United States Constitution. The plaintiffs argued that these rules, among others, discriminate against political parties, as well as individuals, for their partisan affiliations and political activity. But on August 22nd, 2019, oh no, I'm getting a little goofed up here. On September 11th, 2019, the case was consolidated. They had also one. They filed a motion, to enjoin to stop the commission's proceedings until the pending litigation. So those two were combined. But on September 11th, 2019, the case was consolidated with Daunt versus Benson. And on November 25th, 2019, U.S. District Court Judge Janet Neff, an appointee of President George W. Bush, issued the 45-page decision saying that both sets of plaintiffs' motions were denied. And then they appealed, and oral arguments are set for March 17th, 2020, before a 3-judge panel of the U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in Cincinnati, Ohio. And the case will be defended by the State of Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel, and a brief has also been filed by legal counsel for voters, not politicians. The League also had, the League of Women Voters had a case that before the Proposal 2, they had a case that we had way too many gerrymandered districts. I can't remember how many it was, if it was 14 or 32 or something. I don't know. But anyway, and the Michigan League of Women Voters was the lead plaintiff. But the U.S. Supreme Court, again, said they were not going to deal with it. So nothing was decided quite then.
So that speaks that it's the right of the state, that it's not a federal matter to determine the process of that. It's up to states. So that was reaffirmed by that decision. While the League's disappointed, we're hopeful that the Citizens Redistricting Commission process will help the state of Michigan end gerrymandering. Oh, so what's the backup plan if oh, okay. What if a commissioner is unable to serve for any reason? death, illness, what do they do? Is there a pool of alternate commissioners to serve? I don't know the answer to that question.
Seems like I read something about it, but
Jackie, she might have read something about that.
I can't think though. I can't think of what it is.
Another question?
One other question. I think we all heard last fall that our current legislature was attempting to limit the budget for this commission. Where does that stand at this point? Does anybody know?
So the question was about the current legislature trying to actually limit the budget, so impeding the process of it moving forward by not allocating enough of the funds that are required to make it work. Does anybody have any information on where that is in the process?
Sue, I followed that when we were feared that there wasn't going to be enough funding, and the Michigan Senate funded it lower than it needed to be. The Michigan House in the second House consideration added more funds to it, and I can't remember all the particulars, but it would be part of the budget now, the current budget. I mean, the budget that's been approved for the coming year. So there would be money set aside. I cannot tell you how much.
Okay.
I will look.
So there was money set aside in the current budget. The Senate supplied a lower version, and the House approved more. And we're not sure which or what combination of those two funding, those allocations was what was actually passed, but we will find out more. Joan Eno is going to research that for us. Any other questions? So how many of you are going to apply?
I already did.
All right, we have one person who's already applied. What?
We have a second more who has applied as well.
Oh, I'm hearing that there's a second member who's applied that's not in the audience today, but is another member of the League of Women Voters, Leelanau, who's applied. That's good.
Did you apply, did you use the online?
I used online, and I went to the Secretary of State's office where there's a notary public, and then I didn't even have to use a stamp to get it.
Oh, really? Oh, okay, good. I didn't think of that.
This is the person who just told us about the process of applying is one of our newer members from the Charlevoix-Emmett unit that we are mentoring. So thank you to the Charlevoix-Emmett unit for making the trip around the bay to come hang out with us today. Well, great. Oh, one more question in the back.
Is there a length of time that this has to be done?
Yes.
It has to be done.
There is a deadline for the process being
Complete. It can't be tied up in courts for the next 5 years or.
That part I'm not so sure.
Can it be tied up in the courts indefinitely? And
Yeah.
as it
Would we
currently
go back to
exists,
the
there's a
old way?
deadline.
Would we go back to the old way, the way we do it now, if it gets all tangled?
No, the law of the land is the census, it has to be done every 10 years. But I'm not sure about the litigation question. But no, you couldn't go back to the old one, I don't think.
I don't think there is any law of the land anymore.
Oh, okay.
There's a comment that there is no law of the land anymore, possibly. That's another forum topic.
Okay, I'll keep quiet.
If anybody wants to go out for lunch afterwards, continue that conversation. Lots of material to discuss in that regard, on the local, state, and national level. We have another question.
I had heard that there was an effort in southwestern Michigan to go ahead and put so many applications in that they would have a disproportionate amount of people on the commission. And from what you're saying, that doesn't sound possible to me.
That's what the that middle stage of the process that we described, where there's analysis done to account for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just, you know, when
But
I
I mean,
heard that, I
hey,
said,
that's
wait.
why, that's part of why we're having we want as many people as possible from Leelanau County to apply for this. I mean, if nobody else in Northern Michigan applies, then we would be the Northern Michigan people on the commission, or, you know, so, there's some logic to that, but it wouldn't be to the extent that any geographical region of the state would be able to disproportionately stuff the ballot.
I mean, if all the commissioners were, quote, crooked, you could do something like that, but they have to have these public hearings and they have to put out reports, so the rest of us could do more petitions. No, hopefully that's what we're trying not to have, so hopefully that will work.
We've had forums in the past talking about Michigan having like an F rating when it comes to our transparency, and this is a really good step toward reintroducing some checks and balances to what happens with our self-governance. Okay, I got another question.
So where would the public be able to get the information as to the meetings that the commission is going to be holding to get public input?
So the question was, where would a member of the public get information on when commission meetings are going to happen, how they can give public comment to the process, and I think that's available on the website that we listed in the...
Yeah.
Oh,
It's on that handout at
It's on
the
the
bottom
handout?
in that circle. Redistricting Michigan.
Redistrictingmichigan.org, that's what it is. Redistrictingmichigan.org.
And it's a pretty clear, and then Voters Not Politicians website, I'm sure they will keep track. And they also they've done 3 workshops telling people how to apply.
Telling people how to apply for the commission. There's one more, I think, next week
In Detroit.
in Detroit.
They've been up here, they've done them all around the state.
Yeah, they've done them around in different places. But so I would follow that webpage also, and I would think they would have to put,
Secretary of State's office.
yeah, they're gonna have to do public service announcements and inform people.
The commission itself will have to set up its meetings, and then the budget to advertise them through the Secretary of State. And
Yeah,
they are
that-
required in the Constitution to make sure they're regionally spread out and all that stuff.
Yes, but once the commission sets its dates and schedule and when their reports have to be out and when their hearings are, they will have money, hopefully, they will have money, I keep saying hopefully, to publish and advertise.
And those meetings will be held those meetings will be held around the state too, so that people from different geographical regions will have an opportunity to theoretically travel to a meeting and give comment in person. Okay, oh, we got another one.
Well, it's a comment.
Okay, a comment.
I'm putting in a plug for this.
So if there aren't any more questions, or even if there are, I want to put a plug in for what you see up here for our next month's meeting. For Women's History Month, we're honoring women, and they could be famous women, they could be someone in your family, it could just be an obscure person. And what we're asking people to do is, if you want to speak that day, we would love to have you speak and tell a story or show something, but we're asking you to try to limit your presentation to about 3 minutes so we can let as many people talk as they want. But if you don't want us to talk, please bring an object, a picture, a quilt, whatever, and we'll have tables around the room where you can display those objects, and we promise you'll get them back at the end of the day. So please join us. I think it's really powerful. Last year we did this in a different format, and it really encouraged us to repeat this in a different way. So please come next month, and even if you don't want to present, come and enjoy the day. Thank you.
I think we're going to be showing a short video at the beginning of that as well.
5 minutes.
5-minute video. And as with this program and our other programs, we will be recording the program. So if you are more comfortable not having what you are about to share be recorded, we will accommodate that as well. Don't let that keep you from speaking. Our videographer is happy to oblige and make sure that you're not publicly broadcast if that's what you're more comfortable with. And I have another announcement from Ann Rogers.
I'm writing an article for the local newspaper about this event. So if you would like to be in a photo for the newspaper, please see me after this presentation. Thank you.
Even if you don't want to be in the photo, we need people to be in the photo, so stick around for the photo. I've made a habit of not asking people what they like to do or what they feel like doing. I ask them if they will. So, I don't know, I'll get more done that way. Well, thank you all for coming to today's forum. We hope to see you next month. There's a lot going on between now and then, too. Please check your email if you haven't. We recently sent out a mini newsletter as well as our winter version of the Voter. It's packed full of information. I have one other announcement that's coming right up, well, two, I fibbed. The League of Women Voters has started hosting blood drives every 2 months right here in this room in the Leelanau County Government Center, in the community room here where we're meeting today. You can pre-register for a time slot to give, or you can show up. The next date is February 13th. That's next Thursday. And they'll be receiving donations between 1:30 and 5:30 p.m. We will make sure that the government center door is unlocked this time. The door locks at 5, and I guess we had some people that showed up afterwards last time. So please come help. We kind of want to, it's a little competitive. We want to, get as many people participating as possible and help save a life. And then the other really significant date, February 14th, some people think of that as St. Valentine's Day, but it's also the 100-year anniversary of the formation of the League of Women Voters US. And it is considered a day of action by the League of Women Voters US. And to celebrate, we hosted this forum today. That was how we participated. The call to action is that women power the vote. And so anything around voter education, representative government, is considered part of the celebration. But if you have something unique that you can think of that you'd like to do on February 14th to celebrate, maybe do a Facebook posting or Instagram, or take a picture of yourself doing something related to women in voting. We want to collect those images and stories and share them with members across the nation. So don't forget to celebrate the 100-year anniversary of the League of Women Voters on February 14th. All right, we'll take a short break then for the photo, and then we'll re-adjourn for a short member meeting. Thanks everybody for coming.